I'm going to give you the names. Tell me what this list is. USC, Georgia, Oklahoma State, Arizona State, Vanderbilt. And then this list: LSU, Clemson, Texas Tech, Oregon, West Virginia, A&M, Virginia Tech.
The first list is teams that feel pretty good today. And the second list is teams that, in spite of the fact they might have gotten out with a win, they don't wake up not stressed.
The other one sounds like top 25 teams that lost or something along those lines. I don't know. The first one sounds like just big wins from this weekend.
Yeah, because I included Vanderbilt with
are
Georgia.
You just talking big wins? Is that
just, those who feel pretty good. Those with a bullet on the way up. Again, Vanderbilt, I don't know how many more games are going to win, but it was a great win for them. And then teams that played, and some of them played really good people that will beat up other people. But right now, the fan base has got to be like LSU and USC late last night. I thought it was a great football game, and Garrett's disappointed, but a great game. We'll get to that too. Clemson, Texas Tech, Oregon, they won, but West Virginia just honestly got manhandled. A&M, they lost to a really good football team, but in front of 108,000 people, and you got to scratch their head again because the offense didn't look like much of a difference. And then Virginia Tech's the one that lost to Vanderbilt. But those are just some of the thoughts from overview without being able to get into 100 games over the weekend.
Yeah, I think that there were a bunch of not good games, clearly, because it's week one and that's when you're playing your lesser opponent. But there were some really good ones, and there were some really interesting things that came out. I think Danton Land is the hire of the offseason, clearly, because Garrett put it this way when we were talking about him on Triple Option a second ago. But Craig, you should be mad at Lincoln Riley for sticking with Alex Grinch for that long, because they haven't played defense like that on the Lincoln Riley team in forever.
Yeah, I mean, I nothing they could really do to change the Oklahoma tenure,
No,
I'm not really thinking about that or worried about that at this point. And even if Alex Grinch had been better, I mean, Lincoln's eyes were still wandering, obviously. So, yeah, that game last night was a really entertaining way to end the weekend officially, although I know we have a game tonight. And what a win for Southern Cal and for Lincoln Riley. I think that they've obviously, just based on the little sample size we have right now, have made strides on defense. That was very clear last night. And they've got a pretty good little quarterback there in Miller Moss, who carried over his performance from the bowl game. They've got great weapons around him. And I was really impressed with USC. They were better than I think most anybody expected them to be. And that will play really well, hopefully moving forward for them to, make things more interesting out west and certainly shake up the Big Ten race possibly a little bit as well. Not trying to get too far ahead on any of these things, but that was more than I think you were expecting from USC. From LSU, I think there's still a lot of things to like. And look, if this was the previous era, then you'd probably be sweating that first loss a little bit more, but they've got cushion. They've got the SEC schedule. And so if they handle that well, and yeah, they now have to remain pretty unscathed, save for like one more loss, but that wasn't like a bad loss in terms of you're a bad football team. That was just like you got beat. You made some big mistakes. There's some things to clean up, but there's also some things to like, starting with your quarterback there and Garrett Nussmeier and having a pretty great wide receiver, which you're used to at LSU every year. But Kyron Lacey's a dog. They've got some things to clean up, but that was a very entertaining game, and props to USC for pulling that one out.
I love college football. This weekend, I just sat there and watched play-by-play of that game last night, and of course, all the other the really bigger matchups, but others as well. How about Tetairoa McMillen of Arizona, who was named the Offensive Player of the Week in the Big 12? He had himself a monstrous game: 10 catches, 300-plus yards, 30 yards plus per reception, 4 receiving touchdowns in a game that was a high-scoring affair. Arizona's defense eventually started to make a few plays in their win to open up the season. This young man, there was a time during the game you wondered if he was going to break the record for most yards receiving in a game, the better among a few best performance over the weekend within the Big 12.
Yeah, he is unbelievable, and they were losing that game for a minute. And then Tetairoa McMillen and Noah Fafita decided that was enough was enough. And he just went bonkers. I know he's not going to do that every week, but he is a physical mismatch with how big he is. He's got unbelievable speed. His strides are ridiculous. There's nothing not to like about him at all. And he's going to be a headache for everybody.
Well, y'all know when Arizona started getting talked about joining this conference, I was I think probably the first Big 12 people, if not the first Big 12 person to start like really pumping the hype horn for Tetairoa McMillen and Noah Fafita as well. So I am not all that surprised because I watched those guys do their thing a lot last year, and to see them though have the type of connection right out of the gates and in a game where they needed that to be the case was very cool to see, and to see records fall as he's now the all-time single game leader in Arizona history was very cool for that to be the start of this new season, and now has ramped up expectations in a major way. But I think expectations were already pretty high for Tetairoa McMillen. He's a guy who should very well be all year long in the Biletnikoff conversation. But with Arizona in general, I think that, yeah, they certainly got their fair share of a scare early on. You have to give a lot of credit to New Mexico, though. I thought that Dampier, their quarterback, played really well. Wysong's a really good receiver. And they just were, putting up a great fight. And it looked like it was just going to be a shootout, which, hey, if you're Arizona, you still feel good about that because you've got Tetairoa McMillen and you've got some of the other weapons. It wasn't just those two, but it was the headliner for sure. But offensively, I think Arizona was pretty okay. Defensively, early on, Dampier was hitting them for some big plays. And, they were able to finally start to kind of stack stops and scores together and get the lead and pull away to end it comfortably, but certainly got a little bit of a scare early on. And you were definitely wondering, like, oh my God, is this defense just going to be atrocious this year after losing Johnny Nansen and losing some players to the portal? So, yeah, that was a good win for Arizona.
They won the game. They separated, scored a bunch of points. They had to score a bunch of points. They won the game. Arizona State had a really nice win, which was surprising because of how dominant it was. Also, safety Trey Rucker, Oklahoma State, Tech returner Dre McCray, and Cincinnati's Brendan Sorsby, the transfer, also named first week Big 12 Players of the Week. Kelly Ford ratings. This is after the games that we saw. This is what he has, at least after the first week of games, and who he has projected still at this time. We'll do this on Mondays to win the conference. Utah, Kansas State, who were the ones that were mainly the favorites, and then the UCF moved up a notch or two, KU, Oklahoma State. Those are the ones, at least after the first week of game. No surprise, Tech dropped badly after the near loss to ACU. That's another discussion we'll have at some particular point this year or this week. West Virginia, they blew a tire, hyperventilated. I thought maybe the weather delay might give people a chance to maybe they were beaten up by Penn State. They were absolutely, Penn State was a better football team.
Bigger, stronger, faster, better all the way around. And the advantage that West Virginia was going to have was going to be the emotions and, getting in the head and being at home. Well, then the weather killed it because after the weather delay, people left. I mean, it's long enough. They're down by 14. How long are they going to hang around? It was just a very disappointing start for West Virginia. I still think they're going to be formidable in the Big 12, but this does show a gap between them and potential playoff teams like Penn State. And then Penn State came to play. They were just better in every single aspect of the game than West Virginia, and it wasn't close.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that you couldn't take advantage of a golden opportunity with a big set of eyeballs watching that one and knowing that you had it at home and here's an old rival and just knowing what that win would have meant on your resume to not be able to, one, not win, but two, not look all that good was, yes, is certainly very disappointing for West Virginia. I think it's just a reality check as much as anything else. Penn State's a very, very good team. Drew Aller's one of my favorite players to watch when he's on. I mean, he can spin it, man. He's really talented, and this might be the year where he really blows up with Andy Kotelnicki. But Andy Kotelnicki had familiarity. He knew how to attack West Virginia, and they've got great weapons like Aller and Singleton and others. And, they just took it to the Mountaineers. And West Virginia did not have much of a response past that first half. So, yeah, the weather delay was what it was, but that had no bearing on the outcome. Penn State was clearly the better team. And you know what? West Virginia is not necessarily a playoff contender. I didn't think that necessarily coming in either. So that's not shocking to me, but I think Penn State certainly is. And if they're in that field at the end of the year, I won't be surprised at all.
Bobby, our friend Robert Thornton, Bobby from Myrtle Beach, is in Aruba. He was on a cruise and sent an email to me yesterday morning. All I can say is that the loss for my Mountaineers was brutal. watched some of it in many bars on this ship and might say that there were not for some beers in me, I might have been even more depressed. I thought this game would be close, the old saying, going back to the old drawing board. And as always, Bobby from normally Myrtle Beach, but from Aruba. All right. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark on Saturday during Big Noon Kickoff made this quote: "It's incumbent on me to create value. Big brands, big markets matter. We'll see what happens." Of course, there was the speculation a lot, and I haven't heard much of it, but he did say this on Saturday. John Wilner with the tweet and about what he needs to do for the Big 12.
I mean, I think that's him confirming that UConn's, very much in the water. And I think that we've made it clear our feelings on how it is, but best of luck to you. If it creates value, it creates value. But I'm having a hard time understanding why this is happening now.
I hope we're going to get to the UConn slide in a second to go along with this, but
go ahead and give it now.
That's pretty much a stock quote from Yormark at this point.
Yeah,
it's
is.
not anything brand new. That's not, no disrespect to Wilner or anything. We like him, but that's pretty much what Brett Yormark always says at this point. I don't think that's really shedding any new light, but certainly that's his prerogative, and the commissioner is going to go and try to do what he can to improve the league. And that doesn't mean that everything he wants to go and do is going to be approved or is going to even get far down the road. But there are going to be things that they go and explore, and he's going to put in front of them to explore. And UConn as an institution in some form or fashion is one of those things. So here we are, and we'll see where it goes. I have no earthly idea on what to expect. If you tell me they're going to be in the league, I won't be surprised by that he drums up enough votes eventually. If you tell me that there's not enough support, I would believe that without even blinking. So, yeah, I don't know where that stands. And quite frankly, I don't really care.
No,
I really don't.
I know. We've discussed that.
I mean, I'm
give everybody the football score.
Well, I don't have it in front of me.
50-7.
Yeah, UConn lost 50-7 this weekend to Maryland. So, yeah, it's a power team. But I saw that score, and I'm sitting there thinking, so that just needs a few years of investment. Is that what we're saying? UConn football is just all it takes is Big 12 entry and a few years of investment, and they won't lose 50-7 to Maryland in their opener. If you say so. I mean, this isn't about football and UConn, obviously. It's about basketball with UConn. But that football program, man, like you can tell me all you want to about investing, but I need some proof in front of me to believe that would be the case. So again, from the commissioner's side of things and the reports out there that they would stunt the football entry, yeah, you'd have to get anybody to go along with this, it seems like, and especially when you see a score like on Saturday. So We'll see what happens there, but
yeah, I also mentioned those who had a bad weekend, Houston and Willie Fritz. We knew this was not going to be the great start. We're going to do a summary for the schools in the Big 12 with what happened and also what they have coming up this week. Who was the only FBS team that was a double-digit favorite who did not win this weekend? 59 of these games, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know.
Virginia Tech.
Well.
58-1. Arizona and Washington were also double-digit favorites. They both won. And then you had one, and it was Virginia Tech, a 14.5-point pick. Chiron Drones and Virginia Tech had themselves a tough game. Great win for Vanderbilt.
I said, I don't know, a couple weeks ago that this was one of the games I had my eye on because I thought with Diego Pavia, who I have now nicknamed El Bribon, the rascal.
Man, I knew about him. I check box scores for every game, every single week, and I was eyeing him last year, and I was like, man, who is this kid? He's every week I was just kind of drawn to his score, and then I saw him go to Vandy this offseason, and I won't usher you to a video where I was predicting great things, but I'm really not that surprised. He's a player. Like he can make plays.
I'm not going to tell you.
A chip on his shoulder too.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Vandy's going to all of a sudden contend for the 12-team playoff or the SEC title.
No.
But I will tell you that because he's there, you cannot just think that you're going to beat Vandy. Because he's a difference maker and he's a quarterback like they haven't had in a long time. He, like I said, he's a rascal. He's got moxie. He's got all of those things you need. And he's with an offensive coordinator that he knows well. Clark Lee has the right kind of chip on his shoulder himself to kind of pass that on. So, I mean, I wouldn't, if you're an SEC fan and you're like, oh, well, Vandy, that's at least a week I don't have to stress. That's over.
Yeah, they have Alcorn State, then Georgia State the next couple of weeks. In Missouri on September 21st, of course, will be and then Alabama. And then not far from that in early or late October, of course, then you go into the SEC rotation of Texas and LSU and Tennessee, among some others.
Well, they've been the butt of the jokes when we've needed to search for a team name to go like, who's the worst in the entire country, like that you just dunk on. Oh, Vanderbilt, right? Like that's your example, especially out of the SEC of like the team in last, but that might not be the case this year. I mean, we'll see. They got a tough schedule and whatnot. They'll be underdogs in a lot of games, but he gives them a chance. He gives them an attitude and some excitement.
All right, here's one game tonight. Craig's favorite team, Oklahoma, won. They were supposed to. Nebraska won. They were supposed to, although with them, you never know. They have Colorado this week. We'll discuss that in a moment. Garrett last night joined the not allowed to say anything. Although, again, they lost to a really good football team, and USC has a little extra bite to them now. And Miller Moss was great. But tonight, Florida State will try to win their first game. At Florida is misspelled. Florida State will try to win. ESPN tonight, as soon as we're done, we get home, we cuddle up to the television, and they play Boston College.
16.5 point favorites, and let's see if they get close to that.
All right.
Well, that's all I'm wondering. And you know, my thought on this is I watched a lot of football and I saw 20 quarterbacks or more that I would have rather them gotten.
Okay.
At this point.
And
yeah,
and it's a conference game.
I think DJU's got some attributes that you like, but I did feel like during the offseason he was sort of being put near the top of all the transfer quarterbacks, and I didn't quite fully understand that. After having watched him at Clemson and at Oregon State a few times last year. Like, good player, but not like difference maker, Jordan Travis level, come in and not skip a beat type of player. And I don't know that was necessarily how he was presented this offseason. So that was a little bit of a wake-up call. It wasn't all on him last week either. But, yeah, certainly that's not as rock solid of a spot as you thought maybe going in if you were a Florida State fan. So we'll see. They should win tonight, but if they don't, then my God, what a day tomorrow will be. But I do think they take care of business tonight.
Here are the games from Texas schools coming up this week, and who is favored by how much, at least at this particular time. And that might have moved a little bit too. SMU +10 against BYU. Texas a 5-point favorite. That's going to go up. I'm going to tell you right now, I watched part of Michigan and Fresno State. Michigan, this is a good year. Not to just play Michigan. I'm not saying that. They're going to be pretty good. But I think Texas is just going to have too much. Baylor, a 17-point underdog at Utah. Texas State, UTSA, great. G.J. Kinney, Jeff Traylor. Sam Houston State, a big underdog at UCF. Houston plays at Oklahoma. Ouch. And then also Texas Tech after that scare against ACU will play at Washington State. And right now they're a 1-point underdog in that game.
Michigan, I'm going to go back to them for a second. They're the defending national champs, and they're the defending national champs until they're not. But I would be concerned if you're the defending national champ and you don't tell me until the morning of kickoff who the quarterback is. That to me is concerning. Like, that doesn't mean I will tell you this. If you're a fan who buys the whole, like, we're having a great battle, we don't know. No. You're not having a great battle. Nobody's winning it. That's bad news. And for them to have to wait that long, and then they're going to have to go through it on offense. Ryan Day, like, I thought watching that game the other day, I was like, Ryan Day is running out of excuses to beat this team this year, given what his situation is compared to theirs. And even while their defense is good, they've got good players.
They don't play for 3 months.
But, like, you win games big time in college football now, but you usually have a quarterback who's playing at their best or is able to highlight the skills of your skill set players. They do not have that right now, and they won't have it.
Yeah, I mean, I expect Texas to win this weekend. The only thing that gives me any hesitation is the fact that it's in the big house. I mean, that right there, you just never know going into an atmosphere like that, how a team might respond to having, 100,000 plus at their backs. But certainly based on what we saw in week one, I feel pretty good about that. It appears that Michigan has some round pegs and square holes
Yep.
like at quarterback, and I don't know that was handled all that well based on what that looked like and sort of where that whole depth chart just sort of looks after last weekend. Yeah, that was not what you were hoping for if you're a Wolverine fan. So very interested in how they come out against Texas and what quarterbacks used and how and whatnot. But on the other side of things, you feel really great about Texas. I mean, they had their way with Colorado State. You got to see a lot from Quinn Ewers, but also from Arch Manning. In terms of viral highlights, there were quite a few coming out of that game. They've got a lot of weapons. They've got a lot of confidence, and they got a lot of talent. So, yeah, I think Texas is going to be a tough test for Michigan, and that could be a huge win for Steve Sarkisian here in the Big House this weekend.
UT has great speed everywhere, including, of course, now on defense, not just the weapons. They have their transfers, Golden, Bond. They all made plays. I do think, and by the way, for them to play in front of 110,000, their stadium's pretty large where they play in Austin, although not always filled, but they had 99 plus. So it's not like they haven't played in front of. They went to Alabama and won. Different team, but it's not like they haven't played in front of large crowds or a big stadium.
And I'm not saying that's going to affect Texas. I'm thinking more propel Michigan. Like,
well,
I mean, you know, have the home crowd behind your back, and maybe rattle Texas a little bit. But yeah, I'm not thinking that of like Texas is going to go in there and be intimidated, but it is 100,000 cheering for you versus against you. There is a difference.
No, there is a difference. Yeah,
that's where I'm hanging my hopes, quite frankly, for Michigan, because based on just watching the two teams play, I don't love the overall matchup for the Wolverines.
Yeah, I ran into a couple. I played golf yesterday morning. I ran into a couple of people getting out of a car that had Texas logo or whatever as a cap, and I said, I think they're going to win in Ann Arbor. He goes, you think? I said, I just think they're going to have too much offense. They'd have to throw up a couple of times, like have a couple of bad turnovers to me. I'm not trying to downplay Michigan. They're still good, but I think it's a good year. It's a great year to play them in Ann Arbor compared to what it would have been like the last couple.
If they're up by 2 touchdowns compared to offense, it's going to feel for Michigan like they're up 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, like in quicksand. Yeah. I mean, or like you're in mud. Lincoln Riley, when asked about that win last night against LSU, which, again, I thought was a very entertaining game, Lincoln Riley said this, pretty good Big Ten football today. That's part of the newness, and that was a nice win. The SEC, if you take 4 games, and I'm not saying that Miami and Florida was a huge highlight game, but if you take the 4 games they were a part of, and yes, they won a bunch easily, but LSU lost. Notre Dame beat A&M. Mm-hmm. Miami beat Florida. And there was another game, Clemson and Georgia. Of course, Georgia was able to win that game. Those are 4 kind of highlighted games.
Well,
the conference is really good. I'm not trying to say watch out, but that's a nice win for USC, and it was a nice win for Miami, mm-hmm. and it was also a nice win for Notre Dame.
Fantastic win for Miami. You know, that they throttled Florida in the swamp. You know, and that's 2 programs going in opposite directions right now. USC looked really good. I mean, they really look like a complete team for the first time in a long time, as opposed to let's watch the Caleb Williams show, and then he's going to sit on the sidelines and pray that someone figures out how to make a defensive stop. So that was better to watch. Notre Dame and A&M was a really tough rock fight, and it just came down to who was going to bust a play late. It was Notre Dame. That's what happened. A&M, lost at home in a big home opener again. So the annual tradition of Texas A&M being upset about something that happens right off the bat continues, just like the changing of the seasons.
I really hate what the SEC and realignment have done to everybody having to beat their chest over their conference these days, man. But I get it. I totally get it. And hey, your first game in the Big Ten, you're Lincoln Riley, you're going to beat your chest because, hey, that Big Ten SEC back and forth is very real, and it's them 2 at the top, and that's going to be college football moving forward. So I just need to get used to it, but I do feel like what was kind of an SEC thing's now infiltrated every conference where everybody's got to compare everything at all times. And I know that's part of just the fandom, but man, it's so annoying sometimes. So in his case, I think it was valid to bring that up. And good for him. They went out and they beat LSU. They beat an SEC team. If they hadn't, he wouldn't have heard the end of it. And
especially him.
Old Dirty Socks would have been all on his radio show talking about how Lincoln Riley can't win this and Lincoln Riley this, and he ran away from the SEC and he ran away from Oklahoma. I don't think he's saying that today. So, yeah, Lincoln Riley had a reason to beat his chest, and, we're going to hear a lot more about the Big Ten SEC comparisons.
The Alphas I'm sorry, Craig. The Alphas in the SEC flexed their muscles. What Georgia did to Clemson was criminal. Obviously, Texas winning big, and Alabama looked good in their opener. Some of those teams should have. But there were a couple of games in which LSU didn't win.
And I do think that you have to point that out, because otherwise that the mouse ears aren't going to point that out very often. The propaganda machine's not going to point that out very often. So, yeah, you kind of have to take it into your hands and put it out there that, that Big Ten team beat an SEC team, and so on and so forth. When those opportunities come up, you do need to put that out there and make sure it gets seen, because it's not probably going to as much if you don't do that.
All right. We got a couple more good nuggets to get to before we talk to RJ Young on the first full weekend in college football. Miller Moss, last night against LSU, his PFF grade, third best in the FBC. Passing grade was fourth best passing grade. Big time throws under pressure. Including the one down the sidelines that set up, and then the penalty for targeting the game-winning field goal. No turnovers. I thought he looked really good, but I saw him play in the bowl game. I was impressed with him. He's got some weapons. The running game's okay, but USC's defense still will need to get tested again. But I thought he looked really, really good, and you could tell the emotions in the post-game interview of what that meant to him.
USC's deep, like Miller Moss is a really good player, and he and Garrett Nussmeier, I like that they're both there of example of guys who waited their turn and got better, because they weren't ready to start, as opposed to, you're not going to be like, if you're not an NFL player, like right at the moment that you transfer, you're not going to be one right away. If you're blocked, I get it, and you're in the same year. If you're in that situation where you're a freshman, you got a redshirt freshman, he's really good, I get it. But, if you're someone that's a little bit raw, like Miller Moss and Garrett Nussmeier were, stay, learn, get better, and they both did. I like him, and I'll tell you about the USC defense. They were not like – last year it was easy to beat them because they just got gashed by the run all the time. And LSU, even though that's not one of their strengths, teams like LSU with running backs had career nights against USC's defense last year. That didn't happen for sure.
Yeah, they and especially once it started going south, it seemed like they didn't have the ability to shut it off. All right, Zach Barnett with this one. Didn't think about this until I saw his tweet. College football has treated the nation to an LSU loss on the last 3 Labor Day Sundays. It's a national holiday at this point.
Yeah, it's unfortunately
playing
for Tigers fans, they're playing really good teams and not getting on the winning side, and now a streak has developed. So that's something hanging over your head, and certainly over Brian Kelly's head. That's not very fun. But last night, just putting that aside from the other losses of that streak, I mean that's one where you got to have a cooler head, man. You can't be so stupid. I mean, quite frankly, and that's what had Brian Kelly furious after the game. They did dumb stuff in that game last night, LSU did. So you have nobody to really blame but yourself. Had you kept your composure in certain situations, then you probably win that game. So they've got some things to clean up. It's not the end of the world, but I know it's social media, and so we got a bag on LSU, and they've got this streak and all of that. But overall, there's enough to like there if they can clean up some of the composure issues.
I would rather have played a team like that and lost, don't get me wrong, than played somebody and won 50-7 or 62-3, and you're an average or worse team. That you don't, you got to win. You want to win those games. But I love that matchup. And I enjoyed that Notre Dame A&M game, kind of watching that a little bit off to the side. Although, man, A&M, and speaking of which, here's a thought about Connor Wigman, their quarterback. 206 FBS quarterbacks played at least one snap. Wigman had the worst Pro Football Focus offensive grade and passing grade among them. They didn't look any different than when I saw them with their offense the last couple of years with Jimbo. Go ahead, Craig.
We need to make sure that PFS also not the one that was pumping up Connor Wigman this entire
offseason. Might have been,
and Donovan Smith for that matter. Yeah. We talked about that a bit. I was talking how shocked I was about
Graham Mertz.
I mean, whoever you want, but like there's some guys that got pumped up this offseason that came out of week 1, and you're like, why did they get all of that hype and attention? And Connor Wigman's one of them. Now, hey, one game. Notre Dame's got a good defense, but yeah, he was not good. That was not a good showing by any stretch, and not a good showing for Colin Klein either. I mean, one of the viral moments from that game is Mike Elko on the sideline saying, "Run the football." And so there's a lot going wrong for A&M's offense on Saturday. Notre Dame had something to do with that, but they'll progress and they'll get better. But that was a tough watch, certainly, if you were an Aggie fan.
Friend of mine, how about this, guys? Riley Leonard is more like Colin Klein than Colin Klein's quarterback. And a friend of mine sent that to me the other night, and it's pretty spot on. Like, if you watch Riley Leonard play, he plays a lot like Colin Klein.
That was something you wonder if that was even an option for Elko to bring him.
I think because of Connor Wigman, he didn't go down the road. And then because he didn't, you know. Well, and Riley Leonard also wanted to play at Notre Dame his whole life.
Yeah, and it wasn't like he threw for, he was good.
Here's the difference between Riley Leonard and Connor Wigman the other night. Connor Wigman had a huge role in A&M getting beat. He threw 3 picks. Riley Leonard does not make mistakes. Now, he's not going to wow you with like Jalen Milroe-like plays and athleticism, but he's a really good athlete. He's really tough. He's very smart. He's a great leader. He's very calm. So that whole game, every time you look over at Riley Leonard, he's just like, well, when we get the ball back, like that's where he's going to help you win.
I want to jump to Ashton Jeanty and bypass a couple of the other things we can use during the show at other times. Ashton Jeanty, Craig Smoak is the president of the Ashton Jeanty fan club and was even before most of you knew how to spell his name. Garrett, can you get a shot of the desk by any chance? There we go. All right. So in his hands is a fake, like EA Sports College Football 24, like the old days when you collected those CDs, right? That was mailed to me from Boise State University because I have a Heisman vote.
It's actually like a video, I think.
Yeah.
It's not a fake thing. There's a
okay.
Yeah, it's a fake disc.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why.
Yeah, I'd never even opened it up. I just took the case. But
so if you could get the one, that's the one I showed on. We got a copy of that when I was at the press box, but they sent that out. 249 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns. Boise State in a back and forth game. He's unbelievable. And we've had him on the show a couple of different times. That's the BJ Raines tweet. And by the way, that's pretty damn cool. I've seen some pretty good things come my way over the years, but that's one of the best right there.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's doing their Heisman campaigning already, and they'll have all their cool ideas. Like what Ed Oliver had the bobblehead statue that one year for Houston, and other people send out like notepads with people on the front. I remember it was like Colin Klein. Now you put his name. He had
a Band-Aid.
It was like a Band-Aid thing, like a Band-Aid tin. So, these SID departments get creative, and Ashton Jeanty is going to need people to make noise for him because he doesn't play for a team that a lot of people watch compared to his competition, but he's very deserving of the attention and of getting the spotlight and of being promoted. And he showed that right out of the gates. I'm not surprised. It's like with Diego Pavia, where I saw him play on Saturday, and I was like, surprised that Vanderbilt's like that much better, but I wasn't surprised to see him have a pretty good game. But Ashton Jeanty's like on a whole different level. I followed him very, very closely last year, and do feel like I was a little bit ahead in terms of understanding like what a player Boise had. But now a lot of people are waking up or have understood that and are going to be following along. And I'm excited to see that because he's a great player, and he is somebody who I think we're going to be hearing a lot about this year. And what a debut. He can catch it out of the backfield as well. But he's just really, really good. And he had an awesome performance. And I'm thrilled for him because I know he was at the Earl Campbell Award banquet last year, did not win it, but was in the running for it. And a lot of people who interacted with him came away very impressed. We've been impressed when we've talked to him on this show. So we're big Ashton Jeanty fans around here and have been for a while. And so welcome aboard the bandwagon. There's plenty of room here.